Thank you, Senator Udall, and thank you for your exceptional leadership in our effort to put together a comprehensive, bipartisan reform bill. And I also want to thank the distinguished president of the Senate, the distinguished senator from Connecticut, because as we all know, he has really been the ringleader in the effort to ensure that when there are arguments, major constitutional arguments, put in front of the FISA Court, that there's somebody there to make the case for the other side. So I'm very pleased that for purposes of this colloquy, when we discuss the transparency amendment that we have filed today with Senator Mikulski, that we have Senator Blumenthal in the chair, because he has been an integral part of the reform effort. I also appreciate what the distinguished senator from Colorado has said about Chairman Leahy. We have had a real partnership with him on working on these issues for a long, long time. We were thrilled that Chairman Leahy went on our bill and we went on his bill, because it illustrates the need to try to make common cause around these issues. And as the senator from Colorado has said, we're talking about bipartisan approaches here that do help promote the reform agenda. And as the senator from Colorado noted, it would be pretty hard to have a full debate on this legislation about surveillance reform. And suffice it to say, there are differing views here in the United States Senate with respect to surveillance. The senator from Colorado and I support a comprehensive, overhaul, particularly as it relates to the collection of millions and millions of phone records on law-abiding Americans, which come to be known as metadata. So we have supported restrictions on that in order to protect the law-abiding Americans who really have their privacy intruded upon. But having sat right next to the distinguished chair of the Appropriations Committee for many years on the Intelligence Committee, and I think my friend from Colorado sits on the other side, we have heard Senator Mikulski speak eloquently about the need for transparency and accountability. And my view is this is something that can bring together all senators around what really is a jumpstart to the later debates about intelligence reform. So Senator Udall and I, with the support of the chair of the Appropriations Committee, Senator Mikulski, have put together an amendment, we filed it today, on this legislation that takes important steps forward with respect to transparency. The amendment we've offered requires that the executive branch answer some of the major unanswered questions about domestic surveillance authorities, and it would require that future court opinions that find that domestic surveillance activities have violated the law or the Constitution ought to be made public. They ought to be made public to the American people, and we've also recommended they be made public, and if there is some aspect of that that should be held back, what's called redaction, so be it. And under our proposal, the executive branch would have the authority, again, to make sure that no details about secret intelligence methods or operations were in any way divulged as part of this transparency effort. But while we feel strongly about protecting secret operations, we do not believe in secret law. The American people ought to always be able to find out what the government and government officials think the law actually means. To use a basketball analogy, and folks at home know that I'm always fond of those, parts of the playbook for combating terrorism will often need to be secret, but the rule book that our government follows should always be public. So this amendment presents a chance for senators who may have differing views about surveillance policy to rally together behind the cause of greater transparency. I'd also like to note at this time Senator Mikulski has filed an additional amendment that the senator from Colorado and I have co-sponsored. It would make the director of the NSA a Senate-confirmed position. This is a reform that Senator Mikulski has been advocating for years. And I think this, too, allows us to have a more vigorous and more open debate about these issues. And the reality is, Mr. President, the thousands and thousands of Americans who work in the intelligence field honor our nation day in and day out with their dedication and their commitment to the security of our country. But as the senator from Colorado has noted, too often in the past, too often, the leadership of the intelligence community has said one thing in private and another in public. And if our amendment that we put together with Senator Mikulski passes, there would be a new focus on transparency, and I think create some very serious obstacles to those who might want to engage in the kind of deceptions that the senator from Colorado noted and we've seen in our hearings. I'd like to yield back, and we'll wrap up our colloquy here shortly.
Yeah, again, I want to thank Senator Wyden for his leadership and for taking the time to join me here on the floor. And as the senator pointed out, we've got a broad coalition across both parties and across the political spectrum. We also acknowledge that passing the Defense Authorization Act is crucial. We've got to keep our military strong in the face of limited resources and a security environment that's rapidly changing. That's why we're not offering a comprehensive bill today, but we're going to be back. We want to have a fulsome debate. This is a matter that my constituents have demanded that we address, and we're going to work to make this happen. And I, again, want to ask my colleague for any further thoughts he might have on this very important matter, because the Bill of Rights is our biggest, baddest weapon, and when we stand with the Bill of Rights, we can't go wrong.
I thank my colleague, and first, let me just mention in closing that this bill is directly relevant to work done at the Department of Defense, as the NSA is an integral part of the Department of Defense. In fact, this bill already contains half a dozen provisions that affect the NSA in one way or another. So it has been our view that this amendment is clearly germane to the bill. It also directs the Comptroller General to conduct an assessment of the economic impact of recently disclosed surveillance programs. The fact of the matter is that surveillance policy doesn't just affect foreign relations, although clearly it does affect our foreign relations. We see practically every day accounts of how our allies are concerned about their relations with us because of questions with respect to whether the privacy of their citizens are affected. So when you're talking about allies, you're talking about partnerships we need to protect America in a dangerous world. And of course, at the same time, you're talking about how in a fragile economy, some of America's leading companies, those on the cutting edge of our future, for example, with cloud technology that the distinguished President of the Senate and I have talked about. This is an area where Americans have a big, big lead. We don't want to fritter it away, as we also suffer in terms of our national security, in terms of our relationships with allies. So there are high stakes here. And I'm very hopeful that we will have a chance to get a vote on this legislation, as I say, with Senator Mikulski, particularly the role that she has played as chair of the Appropriations Committee. I think we've got a chance to jumpstart the broader debate about intelligence. We've got a chance to set the record straight about some of the comments that the intelligence leadership has made in the past that are either wrong, misleading, or kind of shrouded in intelligence speak, this almost incomprehensible lingo that you try to sort through in terms of what they have to say. And I'm very hopeful that the Senate will want to join Senator Udall, Senator Mikulski, myself. I know Senator Blumenthal and others are interested in it, in taking the next logical, common step approach in terms of intelligence reform, and that is to come out foursquare for this approach, which I'd like to state does not ban any collection tool at all that is now used by the government, but it requires that there be basic transparency and accountability in how they're used. That is long, long overdue. And let me have my friend and colleague from Colorado wrap up and express to him how much I appreciate it. I note that somehow the presidency of the Senate seems to be passed from one supporter of intelligence reform to another, since the distinguished senator from Connecticut was just there. We've just been joined by Senator Heinrich, who's been a very valuable partner in these efforts as well. I want to thank him and allow the last word to
I thank the senior
be
senator
offered by
from
Senator
Oregon. And you